it's finally fall. Now, I know it's kind of late to be doing this, and since I'm super new to BookTube, I feel like I should be doing the BookTube newbie tag, but this is one of the last chances I'll have to do this before December, and December is a pretty wintry month, so I figured I'd better go ahead and do it right now. Question number 1. In the fall, the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. I'd probably have to choose The Sword. It's part of the Chavis trilogy. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but we'll go with it. So essentially, it's a pretty classical fantasy world. They have a few unique twists and cults and things like that. Later in the story, they go off and wander to other countries. And that's kind of where we really get to see some of the world building develop. For instance, in the second book, they go to this culture where those who are ugly or with physical deformities are used as slaves and things like that. And beautiful people are people who kind of control everything, and they're the bureaucrats. Question number 2. Nature is beautiful but also dying. Name a book that's beautifully written but with a heavy, dark topic like grief or loss. For this, I definitely have to go with Francine Rivers' book, Redeeming Love. So essentially with Redeeming Love, there's this girl, and at a very young age, she's taken by this much older guy to be a prostitute. I believe she's 5 in fact when this guy first sleeps with her. It's called Redeeming Love because it's a redeeming story, and she falls in love with this guy who's a farmer. He buys her out of prostitution and he treats her right, and he loves her like she's always wanted to be loved. Her history and her past are included in the book as flashbacks, and it's really, really dark, but it's dealt with in a beautiful way. Number 3. Fall is back to school season. Share a nonfiction book that has taught you something new. I've read a lot of nonfiction books, and most of them kind of just review what I already know, but a nonfiction book that really made an impression on me and made me realize things that I hadn't thought about before was Haunted Hearts. So Haunted Hearts is essentially a biography about Stephen King and his life. I never realized what an enormous burden being famous could be. Like, when I see famous people or even really popular booktubers, I think, wow, I hope one day I can be like that, where everyone knows my name and a bunch of people like me, even if some people maybe don't like me. And after reading this book, I realized what an enormous burden it would be for everyone to know you and for you to be super popular. Like, he couldn't go anywhere without being just swarmed by people. He'd go places with his friends, and they wouldn't even get through a half sentence before someone would interrupt Stephen King or just try to engage in conversation with him. After he became super famous, he never really had a lot of privacy or a moment alone. Like, people would camp in front of his house and stuff. So I realized it's not like that for every famous person. There are degrees of fame. But also, I realized that with being famous, there's this enormous burden because everyone wants to talk to you, everyone wants to ask you questions. It's made me rethink about what being famous would be like. Number 4. In order to keep warm, it's good to spend time with the people we love. Name a fictional family or a friend group that you'd like to be a part of. So this was actually a pretty hard question because I mostly read romances. And while I love the characters, if I were part of a group with this great guy and this great girl, I'd essentially be a third wheel. I'd probably choose to be a part of the people in the Lunar Chronicles and their little gang. Everyone pretty much does have a romantic partner, but since there's such a huge variety of people, I'd hopefully have some people to hang out with and talk to, and I think that they'd be pretty cool to have conversations with. And then another book, it's Sentinel. It's a post-apocalyptic book, and the characters in it have superpowers. Like, for instance, there's the Vanguard, and I believe they can use force fields and things like that. There's people who could go into other people's minds, and that's the Arbiter. And the Sage, who can predict the future, and various powers like that. And they're a pretty cool gang, too. Number 5. The colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. So actually, here where I am, it's in the mountains, and there's not really any fall-colored leaves. But as you saw, I managed to collect a few. Just for you guys. So without further ado, here are my fall-colored books. I was actually worried I wouldn't be able to find enough because my physical book collection is pretty pitiful, which is why I didn't use my bookshelf as my background. But anyway, my first book I have here is The Little Red Writing Book. Writing, as in, see, you write. I actually haven't read this, but I write, so it seems like it'd be good to have. And now I have used this book. It's manga for the beginner. I've tried a few little manga faces and stuff, and they turned out halfway decent, but that was just a phase. I got this book a while ago from Barnes & Noble. It's called A Book About Love. For pretty much ever, I've kind of been obsessed with defining love in relationships and things like that. That's part of the reason I love romance so much, is I just love learning about people's perception of love and what they think about it and the misconceptions about love. So this was really interesting, and it taught me a lot about different people's views and kind of just what it takes to stick together with someone for a long time, which I hope I will one day. The next one is Amusing Ourselves to Death. I haven't read it, but it looks interesting. During my family's moving process, I saw this book, so I just decided to snatch it. Kind of like in The Book Thief, I guess. Except my parents would totally be okay with me taking it. But it's still taking something without authorized permission. So you could still call me a book thief. Ooh, then The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. So I really enjoyed this book. I think it's pretty similar to The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but there's tons of quizzes and comics and little things like that, and it really does have good information. Then there's Do Hard Things. I haven't read this in a few years, but I remember it was really good. It's a teenage rebellion against low expectations and kind of just doing hard things. Then there's A Smart Girl's Guide to Understanding Her Family. I was in my younger teen years and I saw this book and I'm like, yeah, I need that. I still need that. This book is Why Do We Say It? I've never actually really read it, but it's about phrases and how we got phrases in their history. Then there's The Word Circus. I haven't really read this. It's about words. Some friends gave it to me before I moved. And finally, there's Order 66. I'm a huge Star Wars geek, just to warn you guys. This is a really good book, but it'll make you cry. I mean, it's called Order 66. On to question number 6. Fall is the perfect time for someone telling a story by the fireside. Name a book where someone is telling a story. For this, I'd probably have to go with The Book Thief. Hey, we just talked about that. So, of course, you probably heard The Book Thief is narrated by Death, and though it includes him and he's part of the story, he's really telling the story about this girl in Germany and her journey as she collects books and experiences things during the World War. 7. The nights are getting darker. Share a dark, creepy read. Now, I actually don't really read a lot of creepy books, but if I had to choose one, it would probably be The Dead. So this is one of the books in a series that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world with zombies. The people who are infected are only adults. I believe once they turn 16, they usually get the infection. So now society is run by a bunch of kids trying to survive other gangs of kids and, of course, the adult zombies. I didn't actually realize this was like a horror-type book until I read some on the back, and it's a little graphic, like about zombie pus and snot and stuff. I love post-apocalyptic things, especially with zombies, like World War Z. If you haven't seen it, go see it. 8. The days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody's cold and rainy day. I actually had to do a bit of digging in my Kindle because I don't really read a lot of feel-good books, if that makes sense. I do read a lot of romances, and that's what I'm going with. She Owns the Night is a really good book. The only thing is, I'm not sure if it's short. I don't really read short stories. Essentially what happens is this girl travels back in time, and somehow she gets mixed up, and this knight who owns this castle ends up thinking that she's his betrothed. So then, of course, she just goes along with it, and it's super sweet, and I loved every single moment of it. They are perfect together. 9. Fall returns every year. Name an old favorite you'd like to return to soon. I'd actually have to do an entire series, and it would be the Feud series by Tamara Lee. I've reread all of her medieval books except for this series, so that's on my to-do list. And she's a phenomenal romance writer, in case you can't tell by me rereading every single one of her medieval books. Fall is the perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessory. For this, I definitely have to go with my robe. I don't really wear this a lot unless it's late at night and I'm spending time with my family, curled up on the couch reading a book. But It's very cozy in case you can't tell. I got it from my grandma a few years ago for Christmas, and it goes perfectly with my Cookie Monster PJs. You can't go wrong with Cookie Monster. That's it for my finally fall book tag. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I'm going to say I was tagged by Books and Quills. She just tagged anyone who wanted to do it, so I'm counting that. As far as people I'm going to tag, anyone who's watching this video, consider yourself tagged. If you liked this video and if you'd like more bookish videos, then you could subscribe below. And if you'd like, feel free to comment with some of your answers to the questions or your thoughts on how I answered them. Well, that's it for now. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of fall.